So have another video here for setup and form, this time specifically to the hack squat. And so if you guys are seeing a hack squat in your program, 99% of the time, I'm just saying 99% because I can't think of the other 1%, but leaving myself out, it is going to be for quads. And so the goal here is quad training, and specifically the goal of a hack is to train your quad where it's fully lengthened. And again, all we really mean by that is hamstring covering your calf, so full knee flexion. Again, it's ultimately the goal. There will be some people that still won't fit, so you're going to have to do another variation, but the vast majority of people can manipulate a couple things so that you can fit in here and get yourself into that position. So really setup is it. So even more so than some other things, because it's a true closed chain thing, meaning once you have all the contact points, you can't really move in different positions if you wanted to, as long as you're keeping on the pads and on the platform. So as far as setup goes, whatever stance you take for any squat is probably going to be the same stance you want here. Now, again, if you're someone that has a lot of hip mobility, meaning you can hip flex extremely far, kind of right in this plane, then you'll probably get away with a little bit more of a narrow stance, so like a hip width stance, maybe toe slightly out. If you're someone that has that kind of limited flexibility here, so again, if you pull up, you only get to maybe 90 degrees of hip flexion, then generally if you can open your stance and you can actually get more hip flexion, that's probably the stance you're going to want on this. So again, you don't want hip flexion to be the thing that limits you from getting to full knee flexion. So again, that's all that stance you want to change, is just to try and allow you to get to that depth. Does it change some things at your hips if you're close or if you're wide a little bit? But the reality is if you're doing this right, it's still going to be vast majority quads, and we want to manipulate whatever we can to get to that position. So set up your stance, again, probably wherever you're comfortably normally squatting is going to be here. And again, if you're looking for a default, I would say most people try a little wider first. So go to the point where you're outside of hips, toes slightly out. Then from there, you want to try and find the position where your feet are as low on the platform as you can get without your heels coming up at the bottom. And so again, the lower you put your feet, the quicker you're going to get to full knee flexion. Whereas if you put your feet high enough, you'll literally get to the point where you can't get to full knee flexion even if you drop all the way to the bottom. So if you really just think about what full knee flexion is, it's when your heel is going to get closer to your butt. And so again, the lower your feet are, the quicker those 2 points are going to come together. So all other things being the same, you'll get more knee flexion and less hip flexion the lower the feet are. So again, I always say start as low as you can. When you're going through your warm-up sets, you'll figure out real fast if they are too low. So again, too low, you'll get to a certain point where you're not quite all the way there to that full knee flex position and your heels start to peel up. And if that's the case, just slowly walk your feet up. So I literally say half an inch or so at a time. So if you get to the point where they run out, slide them up half an inch, try again. Slide them up half an inch, try again. And most people will be able to find this kind of comfy in the middle point where again, they're still relatively low, but if your heels are coming up, slide up, you get to a point where you can keep your heel flat and you'll drop down and get into that full knee flex position. So again, the goal is to get hamstring on the calf, which for the majority of your quads is a fully lengthened quad. So what you're looking at for then on the pad here is just good solid contact points. So most people have most of their pelvis, or at least the top of their pelvis, on the pad. And then as far as what your spine all the way through your upper back is doing, it's going to be a little bit individual dependent. If you feel comfortable with all of your spine making contact points on the pad, have at it. If you have a little bit of arch in your lower back, that's also fine. Because most people's neutral spine is a little bit of arch in the lumbar. And again, even when you put your head back on the pad, a little bit of arch in that cervical spine. So you might not have contact points with the lumbar or the cervical. Find that before you start. And then once you find that position, you want to be pushing back into the pad a little bit. So again, most of your force should be straight up and down, trying to really feel like you're driving your feet to the platform, pushing straight up into the pads. But just because your feet are out in front of you, you'll have to be pushing back into the pad a little bit. And if you're having a hard time feeling your quads, especially out the bottom, really have a little bit more of that feeling. You get a little bit of this kind of leg extension feeling at the bottom where you feel like you're trying to slide your feet up on the platform a little bit. And however much you're pushing that way is how much you're going to be pushing back into the pads. So the only time I say feel like you're pushing back in the pad a little more is if you're having a hard time feeling your quads, you're trying to make it more quad dominant. The rest of the stuff, once you have that all set, is just about the same as a lot of the other exercises. Control pace, control tempo, and realize what's the benefit of this exercise. First and foremost is to get to that fully lengthened position. So you want to make sure that when you're in that bottom position, it's controlled. You can be pretty aggressive everywhere else, but at least make sure that you're not bouncing out of the bottom. So I'm going to Bryce demo a couple reps. Hopefully I'm going to talk about some stuff while it goes. So again, people are going to ask, I have another video that shows setting up the bands. So again, this is absolutely an exercise I think makes a lot of sense for accommodating resistance, whether it's bands at the top, bands at the bottom. Check out the separate video on that. People ask, why do we have these pads here? This specific brand of hack bottoms out before most people get to that position, especially if you're under 5'10" or so. So again, basically, however thick of a pad you put on here is how much extra range you're going to get on the machine. So again, I've got a different video on this, but if you're wondering, you can just type in foam pad, foam workout pad. This is one cut in half, and then just lashing straps to loose it. So again, these pads cost $10-15. These lasting straps cost a couple dollars, and it's really, really easy to put together in case you have this brand of hack. This is Arsenal hack. Again, most people it bottoms out too soon, but any machine that bottoms out too soon, that's an easy way to hack the hack. I can't help but say it. So Bryce is going to hop on, do a couple reps. And again, once he's in this position, Bryce is obviously in hack squats before, so he's got his comfortable stance. He's dropping down nice and deep. He's getting to the point where his hands are pretty much on scap. Go a teeny bit deeper, Bryce. Bryce's knee broke. So for Bryce, I took him slightly past where is his comfy spot. But for most people, as long as your pelvis isn't moving, as long as your knees don't start to travel drastically that way, you can go to a deep enough position where again, spine doesn't move, pelvis doesn't move. Go ahead, back up, Bryce, so nothing breaks. And that's basically the bottom position where you're going to be at. So again, nice control pace. You want to keep your knees driving straight in line with the toes. So Bryce do one more. So again, the knees going right in line with the toes. So I mean, you wouldn't want your toes pointed out and your knees tucking in, or your toes pointed straight and your knees going way out. And the whole time you'll see Bryce just has nice contact points from the bottom all the way up to the top, keeping everything braced and unmoving. That's good, Bryce. You can rack it. And again, most people, if you've never done it before, a lot of people find that bottom position very hard, very comfortable. Obviously, listen to your body. If you have some issues going on with knees, ankles, back, whatever, don't go where it hurts. But I've had a lot of people come on here where they're kind of almost nervous to get into that bottom position. And it's take your time, go into control. And again, if you can get hamstring on the calf without your pelvis pulling under, without your knees shifting way back, or something coming out of place, make sure you get to that depth. Make sure you get to that position. And then all the other stuff that you would want to do on a normal squat, you're going to want to do here as well. It's just not as taxing. So meaning there absolutely needs to be rigidity in your whole body. And all that means is you should have your torso braced. You should have your midsection tight. You should actually be pulling on those handles a little bit, so you're tightening your lats, because all that stuff attaches to your hips, to your pelvis, and will keep that a little bit more stable. At the same time, you have a back pad, so it's a lot less demanding than like a free weight squat. But that doesn't mean things should ever be loose. So again, whenever you're doing an exercise, especially with tremendous load, there needs to be this component of just tightness, rigidity of your entire body. So again, the only things that are moving are again your lower body bending at the hips, bending at the knees, bending at the ankles, and everything else is locked in stone. So that's it. Just to reiterate, set up, take your time. Most people slightly wider toes out will be a better position. Feet as low as you can get on the platform without the heels coming up. And then from there, same control pace you want everywhere else, but especially be aware of the bottom. That is the main reason you're gonna have this exercise in your program. It's a good option for training that quad where it's fully lengthened. And again, it's a great place for output. So also it's more than a free weight squat. You're gonna be able to take sets a little bit further here. So we have a place for extended steps, drop steps.